there might be a wetland in your community there's a threat of development, and the community gets together and they fight it, and, they might have the land rezoned or, make the developer chicken out. But 20, 25 years down the road, that could happen again. And then it could happen again. And then it could happen again. But once a land trust owns it, that's it. It's done. We own it. Moving on. So it kind of cuts out a lot of the drama. It makes conservation kind of simple, which is nice.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to have you.
Me too. I'm a little annoyed. I set up like a really beautiful little corner in front of my bookshelf, and I like changed all the light bulbs and did all this stuff. Enough, but it's junky. Like this is like my workroom. You know what I mean? And I was,
It's all right. It looks great, and
of
it's
course,
more the audio than it is the video. But you're
good.
fantastic, so it's fine. It's
Okay,
fine.
good.
Have you been? Are you? I forget because I've asked Stevie, but I can't remember because I swear I have the memory of a goldfish. But
Yeah,
are you from here? You're local?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was born and raised here. I was born at Soldiers.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Cool.
I always say I haven't got very far in life because this is the house I grew up in. So.
That's amazing. That's really cool. And where, I guess, what's your life story? Like, how did you get to where you're at? Not necessarily physically, but just.
Well, I was born here. I went to school here. I went to university at Trent, and I actually studied archaeology and anthropology. So no environmental sciences for me, but I think there are areas where that gives me a different perspective that's really helpful. I graduated in 2007, and we all know how the economy went in 2008. So I lived abroad for 5 years, in Japan and Korea and England. And so I did some international stuff, which was really fun. And then my grandparents were getting older, so I decided to move home and worked locally for a bit. And then I'm kind of like the poster child for the conservancy because I saw for years their advertisements in the Villager and always wanted to go to the Carden Nature Festival, but I could never make it because it was always on my birthday. So I had other plans. And then one year I asked my ex-husband like what I wanted for Christmas, and all I wanted was a membership to the Couchiching Conservancy. And I got that, and then they invited me to the annual general meeting, and that was really cool. And I was really nervous, like trembling nervous, because I didn't know what an AGM was. And then I became a volunteer, and then I got a summer job, and then I got a part-time job, and now I'm like the most full-time permanent person there is. So I just took like the very direct ladder
That's so cool. I love
into
that.
ingraining myself in the conservancy community.
That's really cool. So, what do you do with them now?
I do a lot. My typical role is the office and acquisition coordinator. So I answer the phones, I help people with queries and bookings. Sometimes people want to book photography or book spaces for different groups, hikes, and things. I also manage general requests that come in, and that can be anything from, like, I found an injured squirrel to I want to do research on this very particular moss that only grows in this one spot. So it's a pretty calls that we get. And then I our property tax, which is quite a lot of properties to manage manage our insurance, and I handle acquisitions. So the way that I work in the acquisition sphere is the first time somebody calls us and says, "Hey, I want to donate a property to you." I take the basic information. I ask them about the property, how long they've had it, what they do there, what kind of species might be there, what's the acreage, where's the location, all that kind of stuff. And then, we do an assessment. If it's a go and they want to go through the Ecological Gifts Program by Environment Climate Change Canada, they get a tax receipt for any amount that they want to donate, and that tax receipt is good for 10 years.
Oh,
So I facilitate that program. And so basically, if you want to donate your land and you want to get a tax receipt for it, you go through me.
cool. So you're the
Yeah,
keeper of the tax receipts.
I am. Make
That's
yourself
really
essential.
That's awesome. I wanted to just skip back a little bit because you mentioned your poster child journey, which I thought was is so cute. And so you mentioned you had a membership, and at the time, oh, there's so many questions I have, but at the time, what does that entail, or maybe what does a membership entail now?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Membership is the same now as it was then, and it's $40 for an individual or $60 for a family. And you don't get any real physical thing other than a very exclusive sticker for your car. Um,
Amazing.
and it means that you can vote at our annual general meeting. So it's a democratic organization. So we do have a board of directors, we do have an annual general meeting, we do have audited financials and all that good stuff. And so it means that you get a vote. But I think more importantly, it means that you're supporting conservation in your area. And, you can tell people I'm a member of the Conservancy. And I don't know, to me, that just stands for something.
Yeah. What does it stand for you?
For me, in the era of climate change, to put it kind of boldly but bluntly, it just means that you're on the right side of history.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no other way to really put it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then you started volunteering. And what did you
hmm
do when you volunteered?
I did their archive. So I volunteered doing archival work for a while, but it wasn't very long before I started getting roped into other things. Whatever needed to be done on the day, which I think is the nature of nonprofits. If you really want to support them, you're doing the work that they want you to do, not, oh, I have this idea that I could come in and do this thing, because that might not actually be helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you worked part-time, you said, and what was that position?
So that was an administrative assistant position. So that was where I started with, filling up the bird feeders and welcoming people to the office and, eventually amped up, started with taxes and then started insurance and all that kind of thing.
When it comes to the conservancy itself,
hmm
maybe for people that don't know, what is it? What does it do?
That's a big question. And there are a lot of different ways to answer it. And I to do that, we also keep nature close to home. So it makes like a big, fat, thick horseshoe around Lake Couchiching. And we protected almost 15,000 acres at this point, which is a lot of land. And we do that by having lands donated to us, by creating conservation easements with private landowners, usually private landowners. Scout Valley is with the city of Aurelia, so it can also be a municipality. Within that, to make all of that work, and if anybody has a house or rents and has a yard, you know how much work it is to take care of land. We have an incredible hundreds of volunteers. They're so amazing. And so we have volunteers that do all kinds of programming to take care of these lands and monitor the health of the species that live there. So salamanders and vernal pools, reptile monitors, bat monitors, monarch monitors. I know I'm going to leave people out, but and they go out in teams of two to all these different nature reserves and check on the health of the reserves, which is really amazing. And so the result is heat maps of species data, and we use that to be strategic in choosing the next lands that we protect and where they will be. And so we focus on creating wildlife corridors. So corridors of connected wilderness that run kind of east-west across the top of Lake Couchiching that run north-south on the east and west side of the lakes. So we corridor and the Black River Wildlands, as well as the Cardinal Bar. And so if I had a map to show you, which I don't, you would see us working with our partners. So that can be the nature really amazing wildlife corridors that people don't realize are there, where for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, they're unbroken. And so they reach Queen Elizabeth II Wildlands Provincial Park, and there are land trusts like ours throughout Ontario. So we connect up to Huronia Land Trust in the west and Kawartha Land Trust in the east, Muskoka Land Trust in the north. At the north end of Queen Elizabeth Provincial Park, there is Haliburton Highlands Land Trust. So we're working that corridor all the way to Algonquin Park. So it's this work that's being done that you don't see happening, but it's critical to maintain the genetic diversity of the species that call this area home. And it's critical because we live in an area called the land between. So that is where northern species find their southernmost range and southern species find their northernmost range. And so it creates quite a plethora of wildlife. We're really fortunate to live here.
That's really cool because I didn't even know that. Now I'm just gonna go like go exploring.
Right, you should.
Yeah, I know. I see like posts and stuff that you have like on Facebook, and it just looks like so much fun. Like all the things. I was gonna ask because you mentioned land trusts, and I have an idea of what they are, but I know there's quite a few people that have maybe never heard the term. But what are land trusts and what does that mean?
Yeah, of course. Land trusts are nonprofit organizations. There are all kinds of trusts out there, but land trusts specifically work in conservation. They are all across Canada, all across North America. There are lots of them in England, so they're all over the world. And what they do is maintain special natural areas for future of people and wildlife. And again, they usually work very strategically. And we can have fee simple lands, which means that we own them and care for them as nature reserves. Or we can have easements where a private landowner signs kind of two documents. One is the easement itself, which allows us access to their land to do things like the volunteer monitoring I was talking about, and a series of covenants that are created by the individual landowner, and they are kind of the rules of the easement. So some might have hunting, some might have no hunting, some might have, you know what I mean? Like you just really get to develop the rules that you want for the way that you see your land in the future. So there are many different tools for protecting land. There are also things like life leases, bequests. So all of these tools help land trusts to protect land in perpetuity forever. Because once it has been conserved in this way, that continues on the title of the property. And these land trusts working all over the world are one of the greatest tools we have for conservation because, for example, sometimes governments can change their mind. And so they might have provincial parks that are set aside as wilderness areas, but then they decide to develop them and put campsites on, right? They might do that. They might have conservation areas through conservation authorities that they decide to dispose of more or less. So with a land trust, there is one job on the table, and that is protect land the end. So it is seen as the highest form of protection for land.
If someone were interested in participating in that, either gifting land or an easement, like you had mentioned, is it as simple as just reaching out to you and you're able to help facilitate that process?
Yeah, it is. So typically in our region, you would reach out to me. Yeah, I'm kind of the woman. And then, like I said, I ask a few questions about the property, its location, its size, its species, what it's used for. And obviously, as a small nonprofit, we have to be selective. We can't take everything that lands on our lap, which is a bit of a shame because they're not making new land. So you really want to try and protect as much as possible. But yeah, people call me and then I do the initial assessment. I talk to our executive director and then our executive director talks to the board. They make the ultimate decision whether to take a property or not. I don't make those judgments typically. And if you call me, but your land actually is, I don't know, in London, Ontario, then I would give you the number for my colleagues at Thames Talbot Land Trust. So I half of the calls I get, I probably direct them to colleagues I have across the province, which is great. It's helpful. It's a very collegial field, and I think people across the land trust community just have one goal, and it's shared, and it's to protect the land, and we're not that fussy about who does it.
Yeah, it seems very collaborative, and I think that's what's really cool about it is it's just bringing that community aspect and everybody working together to help protect the land, and I think that's a really cool thing. So
Yeah, it's really great. It's also very kind of beautifully simple because, there might be a wetland in your community that there's a threat of development and the community gets together and they fight it and, they might have the land rezoned or, make the developer chicken out. But 20, 25 years down the road, that could happen again. And then it could happen again. And then it could happen again. But once a land trust owns it, that's it. It's done. We own it. Moving on. So it kind of cuts out a lot of the drama. It makes conservation kind of simple, which is nice.
yeah, it's great. And so I know you mentioned Scouts Valley, and
Hmm.
is that under the protection of the conservancy?
Yeah. So
Okay.
we have an agreement. So a conservation easement agreement and a conservation easement covenant with the city of Aurelia. So they do that property is obviously unusual. Most easement
Mhm.
owners are private families or individuals, but the city does the majority of the management on that property. So, for example, trail maintenance, parking lot maintenance. But, when it came to putting in that bike lane along the edge, we had to be consulted and we had to talk about how many trees are you really going to take down and is it going to affect the natural heritage values or the original vision for this land? So we can protect it so that that forest will be there for the people of Aurelia for generations.
Which is really great. We were just there over the weekend, so it was really nice. We're trying to get out more to the trails, and the conservancy is always in the back of my mind. I've obviously been to Grants Woods, which is where your office is located, I believe, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You should come in and say hi.
I should, yeah. I should do that maybe in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Come say hi. And then you also have, I know at Grants Woods in particular, there's an accessible trail, which I thought was super cool, so that everybody can enjoy. Do you have other accessible, I guess, is every, I don't know how to phrase it, every plot of land or acquisition, are they all trails based or are they sometimes just,
Ooh.
like can people just go visit them whenever, or is it usually sometimes like you don't want people in certain areas because of
Yeah.
protection?
It's a mix. It's definitely a mix. And so we have, I want to say 15 properties with trails. And it equals about 27 kilometers of trails that we're in charge of, and they're diverse. So we have everything from Canadian Shield to baking hot alvar to really beautiful mature forests like Grants Woods. So we have kind of representative trails of the different ecosystems that we care for. And on a case by case basis, as we acquire new properties, we make the decision whether or not it will be a property with a trail. Often that's dictated by whether or not there's a pre-existing one.
Hmm.
If there's already a trail there, then we don't have to cut down a tree, like we don't have to disturb the home of a species. There are some properties that through time we let them do what we call rest. So they might have a trail or a public trail, but we'll just kind of stop advertising it and just sort of take it off the list and let it rest for a couple of years. And there might be a couple neighbors that know it pretty well, and it's always been there. That's fine. But we do have properties we let rest, and there is one property in particular, the Adams Nature Reserve, which is on Coopers Falls Road, that has a lot of wildlife. And we found we put up a lot of trail cams at different properties to monitor the wildlife there, but sometimes we find things we don't love, like wildlife harassment. And there are a lot of babies at Adams in the spring that are very, very cute. And so we shut that property down, but only from March 21st to like June 21st. So in the spring season, when all the little baby animals are just out, like a fox kit. We don't want a dog chasing it. So we just shut it down in the spring and then it's open again for the rest of the year, which honestly, it is so mosquito-y and black fly-y there at that time of year that like you don't really want to go there anyway.
No, it's not fun.
Oh, it's fine to leave it till later in the season.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Um, I'll have to look at all the. I don't think even I realized how much land the conservancy is in charge
It's
of,
a
and
lot.
yeah, so I have to go check some stuff out.
Yeah,
Uh,
come to the office. I'll show you the map.
yeah, I'll look at the map. That'd be really cool. I know as well the conservancy also has programs that they run, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Passport to Nature and different programs like that that get rolled out too. Is that another member in your office that facilitates those, and or is there one that's your favorite that you like to participate in?
Oh God, that's a tough call. That's a really tough call. Yeah, so the Passport to Nature is run by our fundraising and engagement organizer or manager, Tanya Clark, and mainly our engagement organizer, Jocelyn. But it's also run by a committee. So the Passport to Nature has, again, a volunteer committee of great people who just want to share nature and get people outside. And so they spend a lot of hard hours in the fall coming up with their plan for the program, finding sponsors, and the sponsors are local businesses mainly that help to keep costs down on running it, and volunteers to help run the programs. And it's a great success. And I know, oh, it's really hard to say, but I think foraging for mushroom photos, because we
Cool.
don't allow foraging on our properties, but like getting to take photos, bird ones are always fun, wildflower one. I love them all. They're all really great. A snowshoe, how do you compare it to anything? There's books and beer where they read a book and then go for a snowshoe and then get a drink and talk about their book. Like there are all kinds of cool activities, and it's been really well received, and it's actually a national program now. So our fundraising and engagement manager presented it quite I think pre-pandemic nationally, and so there are land trusts across Canada that do it, that have a
Wow.
Passport to Nature program. Yeah, which is really cool. So they use the same model and just go for it in their own community. And part of our mission at the Conservancy is to educate people on nature. So that's one of the ways that we do it. And it's also, a common philosophy among environmentalists that people aren't going to protect things that they don't love.
Hmm.
So what's the point of doing all this unless people are out there getting really excited to see an owl, or taking a really, really nice afternoon to paint at one of our nature reserves with a cool instructor, or do all this really neat stuff. So
Yeah.
it's great. I think the passport's great. The only problem I have with it is that I'm a staff member, so I try not to take up places.
So you can't go.
It feels a little unfair, like if I just take a spot on every event, but
That's probably like the worst part of your job.
it is. Totally. I'm like, oh, I want to go to that, but it's full.
Can you go under the guise of just like supervision? I don't know.
Totally. It's the only way I do go.
Oh, because I know I know June's attended a couple, and even not even conservancy related, but we've been to a few different nature related programs with the kids, and just the awe, like watching the kids get super into it. And I just, one of them, my daughter still talks about it. It was from like a couple years ago. She saw an owl, and just watching like close up, and it was on, it was someone had the owl on, on their arm and everything. And they were talking about this. It was like a great, like it was a huge owl, one of the great horned ones. And it was super cool. And I remember we walked behind it, and then the owl just flung its head around, as they do. My daughter's like, "Oh no," but she still talks about it because it was cool and it made an impression, and so
Oh, how could it not?
I know. So
That's amazing.
I think it'd be important for kids to get out and just experience these different programs. And do you usually, is it part of the membership? Like, is there a fee for these different programs, or?
Well, it's kind of complicated. So it's not a part of membership. Passport events were always free, but now we have some events that are low cost. And to let you have a peek behind the curtain, the reason is sometimes people would book and forget about it and not show up. And so we'd have spaces available and people on a waiting list. And so now that we kind of have this philosophy that like if you pay $15, it's a low bar of entry, not for everything, just for certain events, but it's enough that probably you won't forget that you paid $15. So that's our current method, but it changes depending on what we think. We just tried pay events this year, so we won't really know what the outcome is or how it went until later in the year when we get some data
I
back.
think that's great though. Like you said, it's a low barrier for entry, so it's affordable and it's great for families to get out there with the kids. And as you
Yeah.
said too, it's not every program, so you
Yeah,
just
we
it's
wouldn't probably charge on a kids program because, who wants to pay that for four people?
yeah, it adds up. And so I I think that's what's wonderful about the different programs in the conservancy is you can go and enjoy these different types of land and the wildlife, and it's either no barrier or low barrier entry, which is fantastic, especially now when everything costs so much.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of funny. You can sort of tell, and this is a non-judgmental comment, but you can sort of tell when people are from out of town because when local people come by, they just sort of, at Grants Wood, say where the office is, they just get out and go. But when people come from like the city, like Toronto or whatever, they always come in and say, "Do you have to pay for parking?" Because they're so used to paying for parking everywhere they go. It's sort of funny. We're like, "Oh, I hope you're enjoying your, little day trip or whatever you do."
That's cute.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty great.
That's great that people from other places would come too, so it's
Yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing. Like people will come from all over. We have a lot of people um doing this mystery box. I'm not sure where it's out of, but they buy it on the internet. Yeah, and so actually this is a call out to the listeners because we know that they start at the Leacock Museum and then they come to the Conservancy and pack a picnic. So they always come out and have a picnic. We usually go and say hi and chat. And then we will never know where the third place is because nobody's opened up the envelope until they get in the car. So we're desperate to know.
I'll do it because I actually came across that exact thing online, and I turned to June. I was like, this would be a fun thing to do where you don't know where you're going, and it's like a cute mystery road trip situation. And
Yeah, a lot of
um,
people have been getting them as Christmas gifts and just kind of coming out now that it's summer. And sometimes we'll have a few people in a day, which is really neat because they're coming from like, Oshawa or wherever, like all over the place. It's pretty cool. And
I
it's
will do one, and I will tell you what the route
okay.
is.
Okay. Text me. We need to know.
That company will probably not enjoy me saying that.
Yes.
So it's like,
It'll be a private reveal.
yes, only you will know.
Yeah.
Is there anything that the Conservancy is doing or planning this fall that's maybe of note that we can look forward to? Or
Oh, wow. That's a great
I'm
question.
sure there's a ton, but
Oh, this fall, it's tough. Some of the events coming up are sort of exclusive.
oh,
Yeah. So, I mean, our big event isn't until March, which is the annual general meeting where we have a few hundred of our dearest friends come, and it's great. It's so fun to be with everybody in one room. But in the fall, we will be having an unveiling for the Cedar Grove Nature Reserve,
ooh,
formerly the Sid Pomeroy Arboretum, that was owned and operated by the Aurelia Horticultural Society. And they decided to donate it to the Conservancy as members of the club aren't able to quite take care of it in the same way anymore. So that is for Horticultural Society members to come and enjoy the Arboretum and see that, the way that we're managing things, go on a hike. We will have the Nature Counts community science event, which is really fun. It's the end of November. And again, usually about 100 of our closest friends come. And it's a really cool day where we take data from all of our community science programs and present on it to the volunteers who collected that data. Because it's really important to us as an organization that they're not just like going out and listening to frog calls all night and then it just gets thrown in a black hole. We want to show them that we've analyzed that data, what it's saying, what it means about climate change, what it means about the health of the property that they have been helping to maintain And we now have so many programs that we can only do them like every other year. So like one year will be like water and bats and frogs, and the next year will be turtle, snakes, and lizards and monarchs and, maybe youth or different things because there's so much information. They gather so much information. It's incredible. And we were the first place in this region to start doing plot-based climate change research and monitoring.
Wow.
And so we're really hopeful that our data will be helpful in the future.
And what is that? I don't know what that is, to be honest.
So, what's a good example? So, a good example of plot-based monitoring would be, let's talk about frog monitoring. So, uh, frog monitors go out. We have two different kinds of teams. We have daytime monitors and nighttime monitors. And the program itself has changed because of climate change already. And it started less than 10 years ago. It's already changed. So there are a number of frogs in our region. So gray-green tree frogs, bullfrogs, green frogs, leopard frogs, wood frogs, spring peepers, all these frogs. And traditionally, frogs start feeling frisky and calling out for their lady friends. It sounds gendered, but it is pretty gendered in the frog world. In the spring at certain temperature thresholds. So, when the temperature hits 12 degrees, frog monitors need to go out and listen for calling. And then we can do presence absence based at the stream or wetland or marsh where those volunteers are based and find out how the frog populations are. And amphibians are really important because they breathe through their skin and they can't handle really polluted waters. So if there's a frog, it should be decent, half decent water anyway. But our springs have become so unpredictable that now we just have dates. Like everybody go out on April 12th, April 17th, April 25th or something instead of temperature thresholds because the frogs themselves don't know how the weather's going to be, and that can affect their clutch, right? So if they mate and lay eggs, and then there's a whole bunch of cold weather, that can really, really decimate a population. So we can track that. We can track, did the frog population at Whitney Wetland do well this year? Did they do poorly? What kind of happened? Were there as many calling as usual? So that's one example of the way we can use that data.
That's so interesting. There's just like there's so much going on.
Oh my God, there's so much. Nothing like working at the Conservancy to make you realize how much you really didn't know.
Yeah. As I'm finding out right now. And I feel like I had like a somewhat decent handle on it. you know.
Of course you do. I think the better you get as a naturalist, the more you realize you're never going to know everything and you're always going to feel like imposter syndrome, like you're the newest naturalist in the world. But then I have friends who are like, oh, Courtney, what about this bird? And I'm like, oh, that's a blah, blah, blah. And it does this. And they think I'm a genius, right? But like, I'm the worst birder I know.
That's really cool. But yeah.
Yeah.
um I guess one of my final questions from my end is for people interested in volunteering or helping out, do they reach out to you as well, or how do they get involved?
Well, we typically do all of our volunteer recruiting at once, which is a little bit unusual. But the reason for that is the nature of the organization. So, because our organization is so busy, like just running off our feet in the spring, summer, like field season, there's no time to treat volunteers the way that they deserve to be treated at that time of year. So, new volunteers we recruit in the winter and we take applications. There's an application form on our website. And whether someone wants to help out in the office with mailings or fundraising calls, or they want to do something like go out and look for monitors and monitor the health of monarchs and stuff, they just fill that out with sort of their availability, their top interests, and then we try to place them on a team on a property. And obviously, us being us, we also try to make sure that our volunteers live as close to the nature reserve they're going to be monitoring as they can, just to reduce the carbon footprint of the army of volunteers that we have. So we try to make sure somebody's not driving right across the county to do their work when they could just be up the road. So there's a lot of thought and effort that goes into it, and we're always trying to improve that process.
Is there anything that you'd like to mention that we haven't touched on?
Geez, I did think of something a second ago, but do you think I could remember it? Maybe I'll touch on this, and I think it's the elephant in the room that we haven't really got to. But climate change. Climate change is real, and it's bad, and it's happening. But there are things that we can do about it. And the Conservancy is doing those things. There are other great conservation organizations out there doing those things. But protecting land is the number one way
Mm.
to fight climate change. Conservation. And not only does it help mitigate the effects of climate change, so things like flooding, but it also maintains biodiversity. And they're twin crises, biodiversity and climate change. And so if you're worried, if you're stressed, if you're anxious, then join us. And I promise you will feel better.
Absolutely. I know you went away recently and we had emails going back and forth. And I happened to see in your out of office that one of the things you did, just for maybe people that travel a lot, is I believe you took, because sometimes there's the carbon offset in the flight. And I believe you donated what that would have been price wise to the Conservancy. Is that right? Or
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I just Googled carbon offset, what it would be. I went to Hungary. It was very great. It was cool to see Budapest. Very much recommend. But I found out what the carbon offset would be for that, and I donated it to the Conservancy. And there's a reason that I specifically donated to the Conservancy. Like, of course, not only do I work there, your donations aren't paying me, so it's not it's not that. But your local conservation is the thing that's protecting your house and your home insurance and your kids and your community, the place where your aunts and uncles and grandparents live. So I used to donate to other organizations or funds that worked across Canada, which is great. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. We need all the help we can get in the environmental sector, but I just think that more can be done with your dollar here, and I really, really believe that myself. So that's why I chose to do that. And yeah, I put it on my out of office because you never know who might be like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
I thought it was a great idea. Because, I think sometimes it's hard maybe for some people who think that, I'm one person, what can I do? Or, I can't contribute the way I want to. I don't know, maybe I'm too busy or I travel for work or. So I thought that was a really neat way to kind of incorporate helping while still enjoying life or having to be, do whatever it is you do in life. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and you take your reusable water bottle and you try not to buy things that are souvenirs that are completely useless, but you try. But we're all humans and we're all living on this world while we work to change it. But it's interesting. Like, I don't want to keep you forever, but there have been a lot of campaigns done to offload the climate crisis and the challenges that it creates onto individuals and kind of riddle you with so much guilt that you can't see the big picture. So, oh, I want to eat yogurt, but then I end up with these plastic bins every week. Or, I want to do this thing, but what about the whatever? And although Canadians do have a large climate footprint, we all know who the real big polluters are. So go easy on yourself. You need to. You deserve it.
thanks. I appreciate that because those are thoughts in the back of my mind, and even like I know almond milk as an example is one, and it's just like oh the amount of water used to and I'm just like oh man, do I, but I can't drink regular milk. What do I drink? Just like
Years ago, when I first started at the Conservancy as a summer staff, I was paired and working with another staff who's now our permanent full-time mapper. And Aisha and I had this kind of query about like, what's better for the environment, a leather jacket or a pleather jacket? And did research, and our results were inconclusive. Like, it's tough because yeah, it's almost like you can't make a good decision. So, reduce, reuse, recycle, keep up that good, simple message. But also, the thing that will make you feel better is action.
Mhm.
And the place for environmental action in Aurelia is the Couchiching Conservancy. We all need to feel better. Or just being outside. Just take the kids outside. You've done your job, you know?
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. So, and where can people, before I forget to ask that question, where can people learn more about the conservancy, what they do?
Yeah. Well, the probably most people start with a different answer, but I'm going to start with come to the office. Come say hi. We love visitors. Yeah, you'll never see so many smiling people happy to meet you as you will at the Conservancy office, which is 1485 Division Road West, which is Grants Woods. So you can come and say hello and go for a beautiful walk. Our website is really huge. It has everything. So definitely, if you want to learn more about what we do, how we do it, our strategic plan, our audited financials, definitely visit our website. We also have, the typical social media. I don't think we have X anymore, but we do have Facebook and Instagram. Or if you're around town and you see a passport to nature, pick it up and come to one of the events, and you'll be so delighted to meet like-minded people who are happy to be out in the environment, who are just community members, not volunteers. You don't have to do any of that. And then, I mean, first and foremost, I guess, would be to read The Villager.
Plug. Yeah, that's something I forgot to mention too. Is you're one of our major contributors. You write for us every single month and have for the last over a year, and we appreciate you so much.
Well, we appreciate you. It's great to be able to get your message out to the community where you work, you know? It wouldn't matter if we were writing an article in Toronto. We want it to be here for the people here.